Tonight, we dive in depth to the one, the only, Harcourt Fenton Mudd. What have you been up to? Nothing good, I'm sure. Well, let me tell you, you lazy, no good, nothing. Star Trek Weekly starts now.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AFTERBUZZ TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
I don't know if it's good that I had the occasion to use this song, but I used it anyway. It is the Harry Mudd episode of Star Trek Weekly, and so I felt compelled. I said this on the air last week. I had to go with Puddle of Mudd. I regret it already, but welcome to Star Trek Weekly. I'm Christian Bladt, and joined, as always, by Kari Lane.
What's up?
And Frank Moran.
Hey, guys.
So we are indeed doing, a little bit more of our homework from Star Trek Discovery and looking back at episodes from the original series or other series that tie into it. And so for tonight, we are looking at 3 appearances of Harcourt Fenton Mudd. We can actually also talk about the 2 appearances on Discovery, how they tie in. But we are talking about Mudd's Women is the first one, I, Mudd, and then the animated series one is called something else, which when we get to it...
Passion of Mudd?
Passion of Mudd. Is it really Passion of Mudd? It sounds just like Puddle of Mudd.
That's right.
This band should be called Passion of Mudd.
Or, I'm sorry, Mudd's Passion.
Mudd's Passion. You see that? Yeah, Mudd's Women, Mudd's Passion.
Slightly different sound there.
So where I like to start with these things is with you, Kari, because this is all new to you.
Yes.
I mean, you saw... So for you... Rainn Wilson is Harry Mudd, and then you're like, well, what about this guy? Who's this guy?
Well, I know you were speaking about him, so...
Yeah, no, it didn't really surprise you.
Positively, so then I'm like, all right, cool. I didn't love the animated episode.
So that is indicative of the animated series as a whole.
Okay.
It's pretty much like that. Obviously, the animated series...
So dry.
It's a little dry. The budget was not huge.
I don't mind the style.
And typically, especially in 1973, your animated series really has to cater to children. I think if you compare it to animation of that time period, it's actually fairly adult. But at the same time, yeah, it's not, the argument has been made whether or not the animated series is really canon, but there are things that have shown up. There's captain names and various characters have actually shown up subsequently. So, it's the majority of the real cast. And in the second season, we get more cast members from the original series. But, so that's not the best indication of Harry Mudd, is that one.
I thought the actor was very fun to watch. I agree with how you were referring to him before. I forgot the actor's name now. The original Harry Mudd.
I had it. And I'm having so many problems with my device. It's very upsetting.
He was very fun and charismatic, and I think you had mentioned he had a background in theater, and I'm like, yeah, I could definitely see him being a really entertaining kind of theater presence.
Roger C. Caramel.
There it is.
Caramel.
Yeah.
Thank you. I liked him as well. I think it's funny that all 3 episodes of him involve women and
We will definitely talk about that. Yeah.
I thought the older episodes were very fun and funny,
yeah.
too. A lot of humor. Maybe that's the problem. The animated series didn't have any of the humor of the original show.
Yeah, I think that they felt like it would have gone over everybody's head. And also, they don't, they had 24 minutes of story.
And some of it was intentional and not, because some of it is just the datedness of the show.
Mm-hmm.
But that's kind of its charm. Is watching it now and being like, "Oh,
yeah,
it's dated," but that's fun.
It is the interesting thing about it, and you're right. The episodes all deal with women, and we'll talk about
love and
we'll talk about the original series episodes
illusions.
first, and the animated series. It's almost like an afterthought. But yeah, it's interesting because a lot is made about how Star Trek was really a progressive show in terms of racial equality and sort of, but just being a product of the time period, it still comes off fairly sexist, and the case could be made. I might find it very entertaining, but so I wondered if you, as a woman, would watch that and go like, well, you have to watch it from the context of the mid to late 60s.
No, I think they've addressed things well enough in this show. I thought it was very interesting in I think it's Mud's women, because that's the first one where they meet him.
Yes.
I think it's interesting that when they take him down to the mines, the big thing about the one guy who's there is I didn't hit her. Like, that was a big thing of, like,
I didn't touch her.
Sure,
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay.
It's like he went there.
That
yeah.
was very time period specific. And that one I felt dealt with, like, female characters in a strong way, because they're pointing out, like, you just want a sex slave. You don't want someone to, like, love you, take care of you, and help you out and be your equal. And they address it, so I was like, okay, well, then that's cool. I actually wanted more. I was a little bit bummed that Uhura isn't really present in that episode, because I would have wanted her to be, like, either affected by it or not. And this would have been way too progressive for them. But I would have wanted one of the male crew members to be like, it could have been a side joke to have him
Just
not
like
be affected.
Well, it would have.
Because that's not the way he leans.
You know, if you could re-edit the episode now, Frank, I would figure out a way to have Sulu just, have her come by, and he's just like, he's just not into it.
No,
know?
he has a line like, "Yeah, I saw them."
Oh yeah, I know. Well, look, he has to put on a front.
Yeah.
So.
And I do like that they recycled the dresses, because later in the iMud, two of the, like, women robots are wearing the dresses from the other one.
Look, Harry has a type.
But that's the same guy, so I understand that he's like,
he has
I
a
like
type.
this outfit.
So they were fun though.
I felt it was fun. I didn't find it like, oh, this is so annoying and offensive. Or
there's
anything
only
like that.
79
No.
episodes of the original series, so it's hard to be like, oh, I'm going to put together a top 10, because it's like a huge percentage of the series. However, I would say probably Mud's women, more so than iMud, would definitely be in a list that I put together of my favorite ones, because, and I just always think of kind of both of them because I like him, so much.
Well,
and
they're entertaining in general too,
Yeah.
because, like, the absurdities they get into in iMud are so, like, this is different, and so
Sure.
it's fun.
And I've talked about my favorite episode being Trouble with Tribbles. The character Cyrano Jones, not that dissimilar from Harry Mudd.
Yeah, similar
and
vibe.
could very well have been Harry Mudd, but I think that they wanted to create a new character. So, Frank, getting to rewatch all of this, what struck you with this viewing of Harry Mudd?
It again, since the Discovery one was the one that was much more present in my mind.
Sure.
Then these was just trying to see, can I stretch the line from Rainn Wilson to Roger C. Caramel?
Yeah.
Oh, super different vibe.
And
Yeah.
I don't know that it's possible to imagine them as the same character. Even if
How
you...
far apart are they supposed to be?
Less than 10 years. About 10 years, I think, actually.
Then there's a lot that happened.
Yeah,
that
and I mean,
changed his
if you just
personality.
discount the phusicality, like you just completely say, like, all right, it's a different actor. He's not gonna, be that large and lose his hair that much. You just the type of character. It's very different.
Oh, yeah.
There is sort of the cunning sneakiness behind the Rainn Wilson one, and they both are determined to take over Starship. So there's that. But yeah, I think to Frank's point, it's hard to really have them mesh. In fact, it's a little bit more apparent when you're actually watching these episodes again, right?
Yeah, there's like an edge to Rainn Wilson's interpretation that just I feel like it's just like deep and mean, as opposed to what Roger Caramel was doing, which at times can be just kind of not necessarily a buffoon, but I mean,
It's very over the top.
Yeah, it's a much more broad character for, I think, a time when that was kind of in line with what you expected.
Maybe a bridge would have been as if the newer one had a little bit more of that charm and womanizer, because that's the thing that the old one had so much of. And I could believe the older one, like, a lot of bad things have happened to him that he gets to that point.
Yeah.
But I felt the new one didn't have enough of the old, but I don't mind them
the
changing
new one,
up the interpretation.
the new one is more of like the evil genius, like the Lex Luthor type. This is just a con man who you see in both of these episodes. He's forced to think on his feet, and obviously when we meet him, he says he's someone else. And I think all of that stuff is fun to kind of revisit.
well, I mean, I guess that's just the nature of just writing. Now, when you go back and revisit a character and then try to do like a precursor to that version that you've seen with today's modern writing, it's just going to seem very different. So I guess it's just hard to reconcile the Discovery writers trying to write something that is kind of fits into modern television writing, but then also supposed to be a setup for where we get to in the original series. I think that's a lot to ask.
Yeah. I can't imagine trying to make a character that is more in line with the Harry Mudd that we already know, the one that we met.
I think that one would fly today for most audiences.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot
It'd
of
just be cheesy.
Yeah, that's true. There's a lot of ways to look at it. It's just just for what people expected in that time, and it's funny because he's got that like great voice, and that's probably the best part of the animated series is you hear him and he's like there he is. It's like he's perfect for that. And I did some legwork trying to find out if I was right. I hear his voice. And to me, he sounds like one of the voices in Pirates of the Caribbean, the actual ride, not the movie. And I couldn't find out if I'm right, but he's like, show us your larboard side. I'm just like, it sounds like him, but I couldn't find anything that he ever did anything like that. So I just feel like...
It won't be there much longer if it is still there.
Well, I know. You want to talk about changing times.
Right? See, I'm okay with that staying there. I'm like, it's part of the ride.
Yeah, I mean, look, they did away with the pirates chasing after the women. Okay, that's a bit much, but they can still buy a bride. Come on, I guess not at Disneyland.
Well, they're trying to sell them in the Star Trek episode.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
Well, given these two versions that we've seen, which one do you kind of resonates more with you? Which version of Harry Mudd do you like better?
Well, let's ask you first because it's sort of obvious.
As a villain or a foe, I like the new one better. As someone who's just kind of that annoying, throws a wrench in your regular daily life, then the older one is fine. Because the older one, I'm like, he's not like a bad guy. He's just like, oh, it's you again.
Yeah, exactly. He's, I mean, but here's the thing. He was willing to basically imprison the entire crew of the Enterprise on that planet just so that he could get away. So,
or maybe his evilness is not so apparent.
No, he's very self-serving, and I think that's the common bond between both of them. It's I think going forward we'll probably see that Harry Mudd again, and I think to Frank's point, he is much more in line with what you get in this day and age on television. But just sort of the soft spot in my heart, I love a character like the Roger C. Caramel Harry Mudd.
Like the episode when he's doing things over and over again, like that was entertaining to see him be a little more playful with it. Like, I've already done this already, and like, you guys are going to do this again. Like that, maybe he had a little more fun to play around. Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. It would be hard to have a character closer to the original interpretation doing that, trying to take over in that way. So. I was actually wondering if in the iMud his wife was going to find him the way it is in Discovery of like, we found her and like brought her. I was like, oh, I wonder, because it was like the robots will do anything for you. Can you go get her? Yeah. I was wondering if that was going to happen. I'm like, no, they went a different way with it, so it's cool. But I think it's funny that like the newer one, they gave him a gorgeous bride, and the old one, it's like naggy. Yeah, it's not very attractive. It's a very Alice Cramden type from The Honeymooners. Yeah. And that was sort of one of those things that I'm just like, man, that's such a dated trope to have, but it's so in line with what made the show great in the 60s, which is like, oh, I have this nagging wife at home that I made me take to the stars to get away from. But it's just, to me, it's just what it was always the takeaway was the android version of his wife, using his full name and all of that, and him not being able to get her to shut up. It's like there's a little lesson for what married life is like. Of them. Yeah, exactly. And it's like, if 500 nags. Well, I was just wondering if he could later, based on their programming, I'm like, could he eventually learn to talk to them and woo them and make it so that they're not all crazy? I mean, it's a great point, because obviously the original Stella at some point was with him for a reason. Yeah. She married him for something. For something. It's not entirely apparent right away. Yeah, no.
His fashion sense.
Right? Honestly, I love his fashion sense, and that's the most disappointing part about the animated version, is that it wasn't colorful enough. You figure in like a cartoon, you could go crazy, but yeah, he looks like He looks like he's just missing the head, and he could be like a parrot, like on the shoulder of one of the Pirates of the Caribbean.
Or any of the Star Trek crew. I like their pirate pants and boots.
Yes.
The old series. And that skin-tight green of Kirk's shirt is like, whew.
That Kirk shirt is interesting because it only shows up sometimes, and it's not the fancy dress shirt, which you do get in specific episodes. What's the rhyme or reason to the green shirt, do you think, Frank?
I don't know. I whether it's just Shatner wanted something different.
Was it less form-fitting, maybe, late in the season?
It's so tight, though.
It's tighter, huh?
It's super skin-tight.
I always liked that green one, though. I was always down. I was
It's
like,
not
all right,
bad.
yeah.
It just looks very like, what's up, ladies? That's what he's wearing.
Yeah, well, that's true. That's probably what it is, yeah.
He's captain of one of the most premier starships there in the Federation. Of course, you got to flaunt it.
What I
Actually, notice how small he is.
Who, Shatner?
Yeah, because when there's the shots where it's like the whole, like all of the men standing next to each other, and I'm like, he's not short, but next to everybody else, he's just more petite.
And Mudd is like huge.
Yeah, and it's not just tall; his like whole frame is big. It's not like he's fat; he's just a big guy.
But he's also fat.
He's heavy.
Yeah.
But I mean, he's
Thank you.
because he's a little more around the middle. He's big. Like his shoulders aren't like big buff shoulders or something.
We kind of alluded to sort of, when Mudd's women are first on the ship, the fact that no one on the crew can do their job, which I thought was very, except of course for Spock. My favorite is Dr. McCoy. Just that look on his face and like, okay, so you could easily be these girls like grandfather. Like, just dirty old Dr. McCoy is just like...
Yeah, that first shot when they arrive on that transport and then it pans over to Bones and the other guy.
Yeah.
And just that look on his face, you're like, geez, Bones, man.
Yeah, come on.
Maybe it's been
Tone
a
it
while.
down.
I think he's ready for some shore leave is what I think for Bones.
I just love the ladies because there was the one with their back to the camera and I'm like, well, that's a weird way to beam up. Oh, because then she can do... Hi. And then turn over the shoulders. But see, like, that was so wonderfully cheesy. I'm like, okay, they milked that. Like, that, I'm like, okay, now we're just being absurd. But it was good.
And they
it was
absolutely milked it, and they used the...
the close-up booty shot when they walk down the hallway?
And they used the Elizabeth Taylor filter where, it's just, it's a little
glowing.
bit, they're glowing. Yeah. And I thought it was funny, and it's a great opportunity for Spock to shine.
They should have had a redhead too. They got a blonde and they had the dark hair.
That's true.
They should have had a redhead too.
You know what? Maybe they're just no gingers in that.
Apparently
quadrant,
not.
maybe just minors don't, or not minors, but prospectors or whatever they were intended for.
And again, one walk by of Uhura, like, dude, you guys are acting weird, and that would have been fun.
Yeah, I know. She's like, hey, I'm here every day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
or something.
What about
like
all this?
Yeah.
Well, it was weird when they first materialized. The first person that we cut away to is Spock.
Yeah.
And just his reaction, where you feel like, it's that
he
reaction.
He was kind of digging it.
Yeah. It makes me think like, oh, hey, what's this? And then he gets all like, no, I'm Vulcan.
No.
Yeah, well,
I'm Vulcanian.
Just imagine if he runs into those three girls during Pomfar. Then it's a different story.
There you go. Hide your kids. Hide your wife.
I'm not enough into that.
Yes, I was going to make sure that Vulcans mate every 7 years.
Okay.
And they basically it's like a cat in heat.
That's the don't they kind of have that moment in one of the Star Trek movies as he's doing the aging process?
Yes, it's Star Trek 3.
Yeah.
Yep.
I did see that part.
Yeah, exactly.
I did remember it. Yeah.
And that's what that's in reference to. Yeah.
It's when him and Saavik hooked up. No.
I mean, if it's gonna be Saavik, it can't be Robin Curtis. It has to be Kirstie Alley.
Yeah.
Anyway, Mr. Saavik. In any case, I think that there are definitely some great moments, and of course
it has comedy.
This one's actually fairly funny. I'd say Mudd's Women. I might also. They're both very funny episodes, which is funny because it's interesting because. From week to week, and we've talked about this before on the show, like, the show is so different. I mean, it's not Twilight Zone different, but you'll have your really serious episodes. But so many of them, the most memorable ones for me are usually the funny ones, And I think that you bring in, I was going to say a cartoon character. I guess later on he is a cartoon character, but just a broad character like Harry Mudd, it just really lends itself to the comedy. What I liked was the casting of the miners down on the planet. Just some of the nastiest grossest looking guys.
Like, meh,
and you're
dudes.
like, oh man, these poor girls.
I just
Like,
want to know
not
why
even
they
like
were
what.
so ready to settle for any man. I'm like, it's a big galaxy, ladies.
Well, because the point being is that
Supposedly
they're
they're ugly.
allegedly ugly, which I would say two of them when they're not on the pills, you're just like, well, they're all right.
Yeah,
You know,
I was like, two of them
what's the
are
problem?
fine.
You know, it's like I've done worse. Come on, you know. I mean, and that's the interesting thing is like because when they're ugly, you're like, they're not that ugly.
Yeah,
You
it's
know?
only the
It's
one in
almost
the
like-
green dress
Yeah,
that was like,
they should have cast different women. You know,
Yeah,
you should have actually
had,
had
like, an
ugly
80-year-old
women,
woman, or
yeah,
old.
Old would have been
Yeah.
probably better. Yeah.
Well, because then they're like, yeah. Because Eve, too, her scene where she's like, takes the candied jellies and like, just kidding, they're placebos. They aren't really the thing. And I'm like,
I
dude,
found that
that
to be.
hair got restyled
I was gonna
and
say,
she got makeup. BS.
I found that to be a little bit of a flaw, which was not exactly a story point that I remembered going into the
was-
episode. And I was like, huh. Actually paused it and I thought about it. I'm like, well, it doesn't quite work, but you know, you
I
move
can
on.
buy it like your confidence makes you sexy. Fine.
Oh, on
But-
paper, but for the reasons you mentioned, she looked different.
Yeah, like I almost would have wanted her to like, you know, not she doesn't need a brush to brush her hair, but she could have done this, and then like you know, I'm like no, they could have done natural, nicer makeup and like make that the illusion of better,
Right.
instead of like blue eyeshadow. That I'm like, yeah, it magically appeared there. Yeah, that's how that works, guys. Duh.
Yeah. Well, so, you know, we've sort of been jumping around amongst all the episodes, but that's primarily Mud's Women. Let's talk a little bit about Mud.
Robots.
Oh,
And-
one
yeah,
thing I want to
go
say
ahead.
just
yeah.
about Mud's Women though is just what I like. The two different things is one, you just get into like just like the kind of the minute details of having a Federation starship, and just like it's kind of not so glamorous day-to-day activities where they're arresting Mud and they put him on trial for you know going
Oh,
into
yeah.
wrong areas. Like yeah, that's just like. You know, not the glamorous parts that you see really basing episodes around. But then also, too, with the miners, you get to see, like, we're supposed to be in this kind of utopian future that Gene Roddenberry imagines. And yet we go to this mining planet where it's just like, these guys are the
Use
dregs.
sand to clean their pots
Yes.
and pans.
And they can't even figure out to.
Oh,
to
I
use
loved
this.
her snapback.
I
She's
did
like,
like
I
that.
bet you didn't even think of that. And he's like, no.
He's like, ugh. I mean, I did. I just didn't want to do it. And then you see the pans out there
yeah.
later. And
He's
you're
like, oh, that's a good idea.
like, oh, man.
Like, their interaction was actually really nice and entertaining and realistic, too. Like, totally makes sense. He's like, yeah, of course I want a babe. And then she points out, like, no, that's not really what you want out here.
No.
And that's temporary, too. And, like, what you really get with it is, like, yeah, she's like, so you want someone conceited, self-centered, and not care about you. Okay, we can do that.
Yeah, it's a good point because that's you know what you if you're gonna actually live on that planet, you don't want anybody like any of those women. You want
No, they could not handle it.
yeah,
at all.
you want somebody that's just you know honestly somebody that can help you lift heavy
Yeah.
things. You know, because it's like it's gonna get windy, stuff's gonna get knocked over. You know,
Yeah.
somebody that can like really do some serious yard work with you. That's
Yes.
really what you
I don't
need.
care what you look like. What do you bench?
Do you even lift?
So iMud is kind of it's a rare. I think, unless I'm mistaken, this is the only instance where an actor reappears playing the same character. You have some actors who play different Klingons and things like that in the
Oh,
original series, but in the original series. And by the way, I can't believe that there was no push for a Harry Mudd to appear in any of the movies, by the way. You know, I know that he was in poor health by the mid 80s. One of the things I was reading was that there was a plan to have him on an episode of Next Generation. They would have done the old caught in the transporter loop for like 70 years, which they ended up doing with Scotty.
Yeah.
Allegedly, it was a plan for I think the first season, but he was sick and then he passed away. And that would have been great to see, sort of an older Harry Mudd. Like,
Yeah.
so what has he been up to? Well, except for being trapped in the transporter. But up until that point where he got trapped in the transporter,
Yeah.
what was? And honestly, even trapped in the transporter, he would have probably been running some scam. You know, he would have figured out a way. But I love him as like Emperor Mudd the First.
Yes.
Just the like. You know, what can I say? They worship me, you know, and sort of that whole approach. And it's funny watching the episode, you're reminded how many fun little some people say gifs, some people say gifs. Gifs of the Enterprise crew is taken from this, like all of them jumping up and down, being
doing
silly
weird stuff.
and dancing.
Yeah.
Like I've actually had that posted at me, and just because they're doing the most random things.
Oh yeah, it's great.
And sort of that quintessential moment, that takeaway where how do you confuse a computer? Well, you tell them that you always tell the truth, but you're lying, and then their head starts smoking.
No, you always lie.
You always
then you
lie.
say I'm lying.
That's right. See, I said I juxtaposed it, but exactly.
You're right, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that it's interesting because it deals with sort of like the centralized intelligence. There's a lot happening in here. There's, the legions of 500 women that all look the same and want to do everything, do anything to help you.
I wonder how many were actual twins on that set.
Yeah, I was actually thinking that when I looked at it, because then some of them in the wider shots, like, well, they're not really twins.
Yeah.
But
and then the end when there's the other models,
Yeah.
like the other versions, some of them didn't look anything alike, and some of them I'm like, yeah, they kind of look similar. So I'm curious how many were.
yeah, and I like that Chekhov gets right to the, well, you're not a real woman, and they're like,
Yeah.
oh no, we're real, and then he's like, how real are you? And like, Chekhov, come on.
If you're a dude stranded alone,
especially if
they're
you're
beautiful.
you're a handsome Russian who looks like Mickey Jones from the Monkees. What do you think, Frank? Watching this one, sort of, I feel like, it's such a logical progression. They have to do a little like, hey, weren't you supposed to be in jail? And then they explain it away and all that. But it's other than that. It's just like, oh yeah, this is exactly the sort of thing that this guy would find himself up to, And
Yeah, this kind of definitely establishes a pattern that had the series run longer than 3 seasons, that you definitely would see this be a character that could easily reoccur. And bring it back anytime you want. And surprisingly that they didn't do it for the 3rd season, for whatever reason.
Yeah, maybe they were just saving it. Actually, I know some behind the scenes stuff. He was on a sitcom that was produced by Desi Arnaz, Desi Lou, and he was on the first season, and it got renewed, and they told all the actors they were going to have to take a pay cut. And he's like, no, I don't want to do that. Our contract says we get a raise. So they recast him. So that's probably why he's not on it, because some behind-the-scenes stuff that maybe they didn't want to work with him again, or he was possibly busy doing the first season at that point. I think that's the timeline, actually. So, but at the same time, that didn't stop them from having him in an episode of the animated series.
For better or worse.
For better or for worse. Which, sadly, reading about Roger Carmel's career, this is really this is the peak, is being Harry Mudd, and then the 1 year of that sitcom, which only lasted 2 years. It's just like being on the animated series was actually a step up from where the next couple years went for him, which is sad because he's so great in this. You're just like, well, he doesn't have to be Harry Mudd everywhere, but I want to see him being this kind of character. Where's the movie that this guy should have been in?
Would you rather have seen him in Star Trek 4?
It would have been hard to do in any of the movies, and that's right around the time where I think he was sick too. So it would have been really hard to do. I think they would have needed to make. It's the same thing. They would have needed to make 8 Star Trek movies with the original cast.
Yeah.
And then you, excuse me, and then you get around to having the Harry Mudd movie. But obviously, having Khan be the villain that you go back to is the one that makes sense. You can't really have Harry Mudd behind all of that, sort of. If you were to take the plot for Star Trek 2 and then you switch out Khan with Harry Mudd, I don't think the movie works.
Mudd!
See, it'd be worth it for that. For Shatner to be yelling Mudd. Anyway, I think there's definitely some sort of high concept things that probably weren't that common for at least television on sci-fi on television, excuse me. And it was the idea that there was the centralized, there was the one main android that was doing all the thinking for everyone, basically, and just confusing them because it's well, we're not happy. And just being angry and just watching the way that they kind of mess with the minds of them. It's a little cruel, but it's highly entertaining. Sorry. Just checking on the chat. Glad to see our friend Star Drew is there.
Yeah, I like when they're trying to figure out, and then you kind of do wonder, you're like, how would you explain that to a robot? But it's like inevitably human beings aren't happy imprisoned even if you got everything you wanted.
Yes, and I think...
Because you would be like, okay, I got everything I wanted.
You weren't here the week that we talked about the cage, but that's the whole point of the cage. So you can give us everything we want. Yeah. We can think we're getting everything, but we're still in prison, and that's not what we want. Yeah. Some great moments, some quotes. One of the favorite. They're in iMud in particular. There are some great Spock and McCoy moments, especially early in the episode. And Spock has the line to McCoy when they're talking about Norman and why he's avoiding medical appointments. He's probably terrified of your beads and rattles. And it's just like Spock, for like a purely logical guy, like, you know, I guess it's the half human side. You know, he's really able to, he's good with the one-liner, you know. And then Mudd actually saying to Spock is, you're going to love it here. They all talk just the way you do. So I thought that it was just, I don't know. So these are fun. Like, these are
Spock trying to speak like illogically to throw off when he has the two girls, and then later, oh my gosh, that was funny. He's like, so how do I do this? Oh, I got one. And it's like him trying to say a bad joke. I mean, it works for its purpose.
But I like how much the androids took to him, and he's like really interested in the technology.
Like, we like
That's
you.
a great scene, and
So I like you, but I hate you. Why? We're the same.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and I think Mudd summarizes it best when he says, "You may be a wonderful science officer, but believe me, you couldn't sell fake patents to your mother." And he, of course, asks, "I fail to understand why I should care to induce my mother to purchase falsified patents."
Yeah.
Which, you know, honestly, if we could all sell fake patents to our mother, we would be, we'd be much better off. I think that it's I guess the most dated thing really is the Stella aspect of it. And I don't know, I feel like in this day and age, well, yeah, because you don't get to say, like, it was such a, you know, it was like the sitcoms of the day, and you can have it in science fiction in the future. I don't feel like you get to have the nagging wife robot in something that you make now. You know?
Oh, it's already been done too many times. So we go,
Yeah, well, yeah, it's true. Yeah, that's a good point. But
nagging. It'd be the nagging mother-in-law. Like, that's universal.
Well, see, but that's also a kind of an antiquated idea too.
Yeah.
You know, is the mother-in-law, and I just feel like in this day and age, you just can't get away with that. You know, you'd have to have something else about her. You know.
It wouldn't be as good, but maybe too clingy. That you could work, but it wouldn't be as strong of a thing. Yeah.
Well, let us know what you're thinking out there in YouTube. What do you like the most about iMud and Mudd's Women? Did anybody rewatch it to watch along with us? And what are sort of some of the things that you find most striking as you rewatch it? Let us know, and maybe we'll share it in a future show. I do go back and read the YouTube comments. I comment on them a lot. There are people who are very complimentary.
There are some suggestions too of what kind of themes we should cover.
Yeah, there's actually one that I want to do. There's one that's sort of like the best monster, but one that I also want to do is favorite alien. So maybe we'll each come equipped with, we'll each do a 3. The way we do the South Park panel is when we have our sort of fill-in episodes is we each pick 3 things and we rank like our 3 favorites. So I think we'll pick our favorite aliens. And I'm talking about individual alien character, not, I mean, you could pick, you know, well, now here's the interesting thing, Frank. When you pick the Borg, are you picking all of the Borg? Or can you really just isolate, you know, the Borg Queen? Can you isolate 7 of 9?
Can you isolate Hugh?
Yeah, Hugh. I mean, that's hard. They're really just one individual thing.
But although I feel like for that one, you could separate those 4 elements. You get the Borg, 7 or 9, Hugh, and well, you seem like Cutis. You can have
Right,
that.
that's true.
Anything that has been kind of like shown in a series has been kind of separated from the collective, at least momentarily. I feel like you can treat it as a separate individual.
Yeah.
This is where I would have to catch up.
You'd have to watch a lot of board. No, but see, that's the thing is you've seen enough that you can pick favorite aliens. That's you know, I mean, you not saying
I
you
like
have
the
to.
salt-sucking alien from like one of the first ones.
Yeah, and you could. You don't
Yeah.
have to, but maybe you like Lieutenant Saru. Maybe somebody from Discovery is one of your favorite. Doesn't have to be him, but you know, it could be one of your
Yeah.
favorite. But I think that's what we should do for next time. We'll talk about favorite aliens, and look, we can all pick Spock, but you know, then
So we're deeper down the bench.
yeah, we'll go a little deeper. You
Yeah.
know, Sarek, or Mirror Universe Spock with the goatee.
Oh, yeah.
That might be my favorite Spock.
Robot face from Discovery. I never knew much about her.
Yeah, maybe season 2. We're going to learn about it. In a moment, we'll talk about Mudd's passion. But first, want to have fun, learn, and grow in all areas of your life? For those who do, have we got the podcast for you? Conversations with Maria Menounos, Podcast Edition, is hosted by our AfterBuzz TV founder and drops every Friday on iTunes. Conversations with Maria Menounos features celebrity and influencer interviews, along with secrets and tips on how to be better in all aspects of life, from health and wellness to career, relationships, finances, and more. Let our Maria be the big sister you've always wanted. Just go to iTunes and subscribe to Conversations with Maria Menounos for free. Be sure to rate and comment, and when you do, let Maria know, hey, Star Trek Weekly sent me over there. Go ahead and tell them. Conversations with Maria Menounos, Podcast Edition. Check it out. My favorite thing about the copy is that her name is spelled Mara. Mara Menounos. Her name is Maria Menounos, but somebody maybe didn't get that quite right. But anyway, Maria's show is great. She has great interviews and great advice. You know, it's not all for the ladies. I could get great life advice from there too. So I would recommend everybody check that out. Now, in our final minutes here, we are going to talk about Mudd's Passion, the animated series episode, and what Kari was talking about. As I said, it's a fundamental problem with the animated series. It's not. It doesn't quite hold up to it. But there is the simple. Hold that up to your close up. I love that. That should be a T-shirt, by the way. The animated Harry Mudd T-shirt.
And the black hair, his hair isn't black.
Yeah, but it's cheaper to animate. Like it's the same. It's the same company who years later, like a decade later, would do the He-Man cartoon. So
And good old Filmation, where they will reuse footage as much as they can.
as much as they can. Yeah, exactly. That's basically what their business model is.
Yep, it's
there
like-
was like the other versions of Ghostbusters that they did, and
Yeah.
the He-Man, where it's like a good like 2 minutes of the show every week was repurposed animation. Yes.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was a bad episode. Just I was starting to
No.
fall asleep while watching because it just wasn't really exciting. But again, it was a concoction about love, and though it did seem to kind of work.
That was the interesting thing about it that I didn't remember is that it did work. It was Frank. It was great to see Nurse Chapel.
Of course.
Glad that we had her.
Yes.
And it's funny. Like, wait, she loves Mr. Spock? I'm like, all right, let's go with
Yeah.
it. Sure, why not? I mean, he's a good-looking guy. I'm not saying that.
No,
it's just
he's him and
there was-
Uhura forever.
there was never any indication that Nurse Chapel might have been like interested in anybody on the crew. But at the same time, I thought it was very funny. And Mudd gets to be Mudd, and yes, it's animated and it's not as funny. I do like the beginning part when Kirk and Spock go down to the planet and he's sort of being like the carnival
The snake
barker.
oil.
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly what he is. He's like the snake oil. Yeah, so again, it's a great footnote because we only have the 2 episodes, and it's like, oh, there's a little bit of fun, Harry Mudd. If there was like a best of Mudd Blu-ray, this would be like the bonus feature. It's like, and the animated series.
But what I loved is that at the time when they were doing that, they thought that was stuff that kids would want to watch.
Yeah.
Like, yep, kids are going to want to watch this guy.
Well, that's the interesting thing about it is that it's essentially for kids, but at the same time, it's like, well, yeah, it's kind of for kids, but it's for older kids, and like we were saying, it's a simple story, but it's watch episodes of Scooby-Doo. That's a perfect example
that one was
because
great.
I've seen Scooby-Doo episodes from 1973,
Yeah.
and it's not the same. It's on a different level, you know. Like Scooby-Doo is kind of like it's the remedial reading for the summer. This is the do you want to be in the AP class when you come back? Well, then you watch the Star Trek animated series. And you know, here's the thing about it. It's better than I remembered. It's not great. And you know, there's the weird alien crew members that they could do because
yes, that was kind of cool.
The cat lady instead of Uhura, but that's actually because they didn't want to pay the cast members, and they actually get to be on in the second season. And somebody gets to write an episode. I can't remember if it's Chekhov or somebody gets to write one. I can't remember. What were you gonna say?
She was at WonderCon today, which I was at, and I got
who was there?
The actress for Uhura.
Nichelle Nichols. I saw her at Stanley's Kamikaze Comic-Con. I don't even know what they call it now.
Did she have a big feathers with her?
No,
I don't think she did.
It was a panel for. There's going to be. I don't know when they'll finish making it. A Star Trek museum and a horror museum they're trying to build in Los Angeles, and they've been in the process of getting fund for it. Actually, I think it's sci-fi, and Star Trek's a big part of it. And then she came in and spoke for a little bit, and that was actually really interesting.
I mean, a Star Trek museum would be great. There's enough props that you can have
that's the I caught the end of it, but then they mentioned the horror museum, and just so many props and sets and things that exist out there, and I would believe it for Star Trek too. Yeah.
Well, just even like the Star Trek experience in Vegas, where you'd walk through and they had.
That
timelines
was fun.
and memorabilia. Yeah. Go to Quarks.
That doesn't still exist, does it?
No.
I think they got rid of it. I remember doing that, though. That was fun.
That is all gone. That was something that was the Hilton, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was pretty fun, though. Even if you had like never really seen much of it, it was still like an exciting walkthrough thing.
Well, anyway, we hope everybody enjoyed visiting with Harry Mudd. You know, I wish that I had enough of a wardrobe that I could have come in dressed like Harry Mudd in a Harry Mudd style.
Would you draw a mustache?
I would have grown that, and I would have bought the mustache wax. I really should have, you know.
You could have drawn it. You'd be like the 2D animation.
That's true. All right, you know what? Maybe for a future episode,
Halloween episode. Way in advance.
That's way in advance. Yeah, hopefully by Halloween we know when Star Trek Discovery is coming back.
Oh, please.
Because I love watching the old episodes and talking about it, but there's very little news to report, unfortunately. I look every week to see if we can share anything. Nope, very buttoned down, but hopefully there's something to talk about soon. So there was talk before the show that next Sunday's Easter, but we'll be here. We'll talk about favorite aliens. You know, we'll pick some favorites and let us know yours. Leave a comment on YouTube. But until then, you can follow us on social media. I'm Christian Bladt. You can follow me at ChristianDMZ. Kari, where do people find you?
Yeah, you guys can find me online at Kari D Lane. That's KaridLane.
And Frank.
Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at HappyGoJackie.
All right, thanks so much. Like I said, we'll see you next Sunday. But until then, live long and prosper.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.